Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the May 18th, 2022 meeting of the Gaithersburg Planning Commission. First up tonight is the approval of our minutes from April 20th. Is there a motion, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes of April 20th, 2022 as read into the record.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Mr. Chair, I was absent, but I saw the meeting.
Excellent. So that passes 4-0. Thank you. Next up, we have a consent agenda, and there's one item on that tonight for AFP-9277-2022. Add park to stormwater management facility at Short Street, Still Creek Lane, and Turtle Pond Lane in the MXD mixed-use development zone. This is an amendment to final site plan, and again, it's a consent agenda. Are there any questions for staff on the consent agenda?
Yep. It's a good idea. It's a great idea.
Yeah. All right, great. Is there a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the consent agenda as presented and read into the record.
Second.
All right, it's moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. For staff, a quick note, and this is just a typo, nothing for the record per se. You look at the first condition, it says applicant must satisfactorily address staff comments prior to issuance of a site development.
Oh,
So you might just want, I'm assuming that permit, but I don't know.
yeah.
Okay.
We can clarify that.
Just so that when, 50 years from now, when they're reading the archives and writing the history of that park, they'll get it right. All right. We have, next up is our site plan agenda. There's one item for SP-9199-2022, a new 142,600 square foot life sciences office building at 735 Watkins Mill Road in the I3 Industrial and Office Park Zone. This is final site plan. Good evening, all. Let's jump in.
Good evening, Commissioners. Staff is before you to present final site plan application SP-9199-2022. This application was based on the concept preliminary site plan SP-07008, which was approved on October 20th, 2010, and approved the overall proposal for the Monument Office Park. This application represents the third of a four-phase project, the fourth phase being the second Kaiser Permanente office building shown on the concept plan. As shown on the screen, the office building is located at 735 Watkins Mill Road. The property is accessible from Watkins Mill Road and Maryland Route 355, North Frederick Avenue. This application comes before Planning Commission in accordance with Section 24-168, which requires the Planning Commission to grant final site plan approval. The applicant is requesting approval to construct a 142,600 square foot, four-story life sciences office building. The applicant is also requesting approval for amendment to Final Forest Conservation Plan ENV-9201-2022, pursuant to Chapter 22 of the City Code. Here to start the presentation on behalf of the applicant is their attorney, Mr. Jody Klein.
Chris, I have to tell you, I'm going to apologize. My script, I was introduced to staff, and I didn't. I just sort of flipped right through that. I apologize. Thanks for being here, and thanks for introducing the application. Good evening, Mr. Klein.
Good evening. Thank you. For the record, my name is Jody Klein. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Miller, Miller & Canby with offices at 200B Monroe Street. And I cannot tell you how happy I am to be in a hearing with live people face to face instead of having to talk to you over a computer screen. Just so much better, I think, better dialogue going on between us when we do that. My role is kind of limited. The attorney
Jody,
always has.
You can see us when we roll our eyes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the body English is much more obvious when you sit.
No hiding that now.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
No, I
sure. But nobody really wants to hear from the attorney on this stuff because you want to get into the building. That's what really kind of is important, how it sits on the land. But there's a couple of historical things that I've been asked to stress because the staff really thought it was important that you be familiar with two particular items. And so if we could have the first exhibit up there, please. This is an exhibit from the 2008, I guess that'd be a preliminary plan approval for the Monument Office Park. And we're showing it really just to show you the evolution of how the park was supposed to develop. So in the upper left-hand corner, which you can't read all that little writing on the top, but it says that's actually phase one. That was going to be the first building in the park. That's the Kaiser Permanente building that exists there today, and that was always phase one. The middle image on the top row is what was supposed to occur next, phase two, which was the hotel. And you know how long it took to get the hotel there, so that tells you kind of how long it's taken this community, this project to mature. But that exhibit itself is what is in the field today. The one in the upper right-hand corner would have been phase three, which would have been Kaiser Permanente's second building, which was originally approved for 200,000 square feet. And of course, it's not been built yet. And I'm going to kind of skip over the bottom left and the middle on the bottom row, simply because they're just representations of the phase that were supposed to occur, and take you to the one in the lower right-hand corner, which is called phase six, which finally includes our building, what we call OB3 or Unit 3 within the Monument Office Park condominium. And of relevance there is that when OB2, Kaiser Permanente 2, and OB3 Monument both get built, there would have been enough demand for parking. We would have had to build a parking structure. So that was supposed to show you what was the envisioned sequence or evolution of the project. Could I have the next exhibit, please? So this is also one of the exhibits that's been generated to show you what's going on, and it basically shows what's in the field today with the Kaiser Permanente and the hotel there, and our project in the upper right-hand corner, which you'll hear a lot more about in a minute or two. The next exhibit, the only difference between that and the one previous to that is the footprint of the building that was actually approved for that property itself, and I just wanted to give you the specifics on it so you know what was originally approved, and so you can contrast that with what you're going to see today. So that was a 260,000 square foot office building, 8 floors, about 110 feet tall, 867 parking spaces, to be located, 48 feet from Watkins Mill Road after dedication was ultimately going to occur. And then the third exhibit basically shows what would happen when OB2, the Kaiser Permanente building, gets built. And the reason the staff wanted us to stress this is that they've insisted through the whole review process that we always be able to demonstrate that we had enough parking to satisfy our building, and that there was always enough available to satisfy any other users to build in the community, in particular Kaiser Permanente. And the reason that becomes important is that it's a condominium regime, and each of the condominium units themselves are the footprints of the building. So there's some parking associated with each building, but most of the parking is in common element areas. So it's basically a pool of available parking. And so Kaiser Permanente obviously doesn't want, and your staff didn't want us to encroach at all on whatever parking they need. They have a pre-approval for 200,000 square feet. They need 667 parking spaces. And what this exhibit shows is that there's a surplus, which you probably can't read, but in the lower level, there's 4 more spaces than the 664, I think it is, that's necessary to serve all of the uses proposed and the 200,000 square feet for Kaiser Permanente. So your staff wanted you to be comfortable that what we're doing does not erode or encroach on the development potential of any of the other properties. The other thing I'd like to take you to, if you can give me the next exhibit, please, is a little bit more global issue in terms of a long-range parking scheme. And what the staff wanted us to do was make sure that you are aware of the fact that when the IBM property initially came in '92, the annexation, and then through all the multiple re-subdivisions after that, that staff felt that there was a planning principle that all of the development be interlinked, that it be basically an integrated office and research and development office park where you could move particularly from the southern end to Watkins Mill or vice versa and be able to move through the whole project. And this came up in the context of this. When we had our 2008, I believe it was, preliminary plan approved, we had, maybe unfortuitously from our point of view, used the label of drive lane B, or drive B, street B, street D, whatever it was. And from staff's point of view, Jody, streets have a meaning to us in our road code in terms of what we can do in terms of allowing parking, and we don't allow perpendicular 90-degree parking on streets. And if these are streets and you want to park at 90 degrees, we can't allow you to do that. So we went back and forth about whether this is a street, whether it's not dedicated, or whether it's really a street. But we ultimately decided that the real answer to this is, can this still be a integrated office and industrial park because of some of the development that has been approved and in fact actually occurred? And if I could have the next exhibit, please. See what this one's going to be. Could you, I'll go back one, I'm sorry. Yeah. What this is sort of a two-part exhibit. If you look at page 2 of the staff report or page 6 of the staff report, which are aerial photographs that show the Monument Office Park on the north and then the FedEx property below that, you can see that the development of the FedEx property essentially blocks off the logical pathways that would have occurred if we were trying to encourage movement from the south to the north. It is true that when you approved this final site plan for FedEx, you did reserve a connection into the Monument Office Park, but it's undefined as to where that's going to be. And based on the way their parking is all laid out with hard curbs and drive lanes, it just is not going to be an easy connection. And I believe that that was probably even further compounded when the Manton plans came in, and there's a connection between FedEx and Manton, but it's off to the side on a very unusual location. So the point being, there's no main thoroughfare that goes from the south to the north. These two things don't really work together that well. So if you had a chance to look at the staff report, we kind of had an agreement with the staff that probably the evolution of the development out here does not allow you to consummate the original planning principle, if in fact there was one, to have a street running through all the communities. So that comes up really only in the context of, can we park cars at 90-degree angles, which will come up when we actually have our presentation. So with those two kind of historical items and overview, I'm glad to answer any questions you have, but I think you probably would like to hear from Dana Clark, who's going to tell you how the building is located and oriented, and then Jeff's going to tell you how it's going to look. Do you have any questions of me, though?
Any?
Okay, thank you very much.
Not for now, Dave.
Dana? And do you want to do that from here, down there, or you do it wherever you want? Wherever you'd like to do it.
All right.
But you take your minute.
All right, thank you. Good evening, I'm Dana Clark with Clark Azar & Associates, the civil engineer on the project. And pursuant to Jody's description of the history of the project, this is an overview of the overall site and where our project sits on it in the upper left or upper right quadrant, OB3. OB2 is not built yet, but then the hotel and the Kaiser building are. This just shows how our entrance is off of Spectrum Avenue. There is no direct connection off 355. Everyone enters the office park through the same location. Can you go to the next one, Chris? All right, so this is our colored up blow up of our site. After entering off Spectrum Avenue, we have 2 access points directly off of Spectrum and then farther to the east. We have provided 175 parking spaces on our site, taking the remainder of our 214 required from the bulk overview parking spaces for the development. We provided site circulation for the WB50s and any other possible delivery vehicles that would be provided, and fire trucks all the way around the site. The main entrance is the south entrance, located closest to the hotel side. Yes, right there, with another secondary entrance on the south side. The required landscaping and FCP requirements have been met through canopy trees predominantly, as shown, as well as the stormwater management requirements, the bulk of which are provided via surface bioretention facilities. There is an existing substation to the northeast, which will be removed at a later date by Monument. We've also provided a fairly extensive access paths for pedestrians around the development, as we're removing one sidewalk that currently exists on the north side of our drive aisle. So we're providing another sidewalk on the hotel side of our main drive, that street that Jody was previously referring to, as well as a connection around our site from the hotel, kind of in the area of the substation, and then access directly to Spectrum. Additionally, we are connecting the existing asphalt trail all the way to the east which currently has a dead end, and providing that connection to Watkins Mill 355 intersection. We're providing adequate site lighting for all of these access paths and our parking lots. I think that's probably the bulk of that one, Chris. This is just a closer view of the landscaping plan and how those requirements are being met and the breakdown of all the trees, shrubs, screening, etc. And I think Jeff is going to go into the building unless there are any questions on the site.
Let me just ask you, if you put the plan up that showed the extension of the asphalt path on the linear park, just for quick kind of illustrative purposes, give me a before and after on how cars got and will get to the hotel, and how pedestrians using the linear park trail would get to this building.
Cars currently get to the hotel via the access on Spectrum Drive, similarly to everyone else. So we're not impacting
But right
that.
now, it's a drive aisle that feels like a road, or at least a kind of a reserved drive aisle that gets them to the hotel. It's not going through a parking lot.
It's a trail. It's not a road. It's an asphalt paved trail, but it's not intended to be for vehicular access.
No, I'm talking about to the hotel, the vehicular path in for the hotel.
Yes.
You're in a car, right?
Mhm.
You drive in Spectrum, turn
Sure.
left, and the drive aisle that takes you to the hotel is a dedicated, at least it feels like it now, right? A kind of a dedicated drive aisle. Moving forward, it will appear to cut through the parking field for the new building, right?
Yes.
Because you've
somewhat.
got parking, end in off of it. There's no continuous aisle or anything like that. It sort of becomes a parking lot.
Correct.
All right, so that condition, the hotel folks are all aware of that, they understand that, they understand the wayfinding, all of that's been discussed, right?
Can I add a little context? So I'm Ryan Kim, I'm with Monument Realty, I'm the development manager on this project. So the hotel actually has its front door on North Frederick Avenue, and there's a
Right.
North Frederick Avenue address. There actually is a access point directly off of North Frederick Avenue. So I would imagine that most people that are putting that into their GPS are being pulled onto 355 and entering that way. I agree there will still be people that enter through Spectrum Ave, but I would think the majority of people that are wayfinding to that point are going to come
Okay,
in
fair
through
enough, yeah,
the-
that's right,
the
there is a curb
355
cut right
entrance.
out, yeah, okay, fair
Yeah.
enough. All right, now, then the pedestrian piece, if you're on the linear park and you're using the asphalt trail and you want to go to this new building, is there a connection back onto the site, or?
The connection really has to be, unless you're going back towards the hotel, would have to be north and then along Watkins Mill and around that way.
So around the substation or kind of?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you were coming from the south, there is a path from the linear path at the curb cut into the hotel off of North Frederick, that somebody walking from the south could enter the site and circulate that way.
And then if you're heading out of your building as a pedestrian user, whatever, and you're trying to get to, say, all the stuff that's over at Spectrum, the sidewalk condition you've developed really takes you across the parking to sort of the south side of the site, then over to Spectrum, and then you're kind of walking away from all that and then back up again. Is that right?
You are, but there's also a sidewalk on our northern side of the property alongside the building.
Okay.
And then a connection point on our west side of the building that crosses our drive aisle and is a more direct route to
Okay.
Spectrum. You could go that way.
Got it. Okay. So the connections are all kind of there. We can get into the discussion later about how. Okay.
Sure.
So let's go ahead and walk them through it.
I was just gonna say, like, you said there's the sidewalk on the north side of your property of your building with
The north entrance. So it's really the south side of our building.
oh, it's in front of the building.
The
between-
south entrance, yes.
Okay, so what I'm seeing on the screen, you come on Watkins, you make that either left or right hand turn. You're talking about there's a little crosswalk there that goes into the side of the building, and then you'd walk on the sidewalk all the way around the front of your building to get to or I said front. You'd walk around the south side, the south facade
The
of the
south
building.
side, yes.
So there is no connection on the north side of the building to anything.
No, there is not.
Can you tell us what the connection on the east side is doing?
The east side was intended to provide a pathway from the hotel because there's already a curb cut median on the northeast section of the hotel where that crosswalk lies, to walk north near the corner of the substation and then across west into our site.
And what's the reason that eastern sidewalk can't cut across the bike trail?
It could potentially, we were trying to save the tree that's currently there, but that.
So, I mean, you go almost 200 feet east in order to go 50 feet back to get to the hotel, but you won't go around a tree? I'm sorry, I'm being mean, but it's, but.
You'd be surprised what I've done to save trees.
Yeah, I'm all for saving a tree. We all are. But I think we're trying to figure out, the site plan doesn't seem to have direct paths, right? You know, this is gonna be a deer trail building, like crazy. The sidewalks that you're spending a lot of money and effort putting in aren't gonna be used, right? You're gonna have a bunch of people just cutting across, right? Because that's what people do.
That is what
right?
people do.
The goal here would be, I would think, to try and pave that, to make it, make it usable, nice, right? Landscaped, make that pedestrian choice, being able to walk over and get lunch and walk back, the number one choice, rather than going in to get in your car and go around.
Sure.
We have an opportunity here, I think somewhat to Jody's point, we did talk years ago about trying to create some kind of internal pedestrian path as well as sort of a central spine automotive. I'm much less worried about that central automotive spine than I am about creating some kind of pedestrian prioritized pathway that's efficient across the site in both directions. When you come out of the front door, what's the fastest path to get you to what we've already invested in, which is a large hiker-biker or on Watkins Mill Road? Those two lights across that major road, right? It's the only way to get across.
So I tell you what, we'll get into discussion.
Yeah, sorry.
Good to ask questions, but let's get through the presentation, and then we can get into that as a
Right,
direction.
yeah, sorry, you weren't done. Right, so we're saying, you were finished? Or?
Yes, Jeff is going to talk about building.
Right.
Sugar Cane time. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, gentlemen of the Planning Commission. Feels like we're back in the 60s, there's no women up there. But anyhow, my name is Jeff Fuller, Managing Principal, DNC Architects, and owner of the building at 201 East Diamond, so we're sort of a local to Gaithersburg firm. We're actually here to present to you the monument project here at 735 Watkins Mill Road, and we're very proud of what the building is and what we think it can add to the city of Gaithersburg. I want to thank Greg and Chris for their help on going through the planning staff and through the review process. Definitely want to thank Ryan and Michael from Monument for trusting us with their first foray into life science development, because they've never done that before. And obviously want to thank Chris and Jody and Dana for sort of setting the table so I can go through some more details of the project. From a context standpoint, we DNC have been working on life science projects for over 50 years. Although the majority of that work has really been in the last 30 years in terms of it really being intense numbers of projects. One of the things we've noticed over the last 10 years in particular, there's been a huge shift. It used to be, say, 20 years ago, the majority of life science tenants would be happy to be out by the air park, be out in industrial projects. They would like to be in much more flex type environments where the land was cheap and they could have some ability to get their ducts work in and out of a building less expensively. In the last 10 years, that's changed dramatically. What we're finding now is people, the tenants, want to be in a first-class location. If it can be mixed use, that's their preference. They really want to be in a location, even if it costs more to fit up the space, to be able to retain their employees. Employees are a tough sell these days in almost all business, but in particular in the life science. So that's really the context of where things are coming from. People really want to be in these mixed-use environments. I actually had a conversation with Gary Edinburgh with Rogers last week. He called me about some of the stuff he's studying at Lake Forest. And I, again, stressed the importance, if he's thinking about life science there, of a high-quality environment, that it should not just be where it was. It's got to change the whole context of what it was, because that's what people want to go to.
Is Jeff making news with this?
I'm sorry?
You're kind of making news with that. Now, keep going. Okay.
I'll let you. Okay. Anyhow, from a bigger picture perspective, people should recognize that the DMV is essentially number 3 or 4 in the nation in terms of life science development. And of the three jurisdictions, Maryland is the highest, and certainly the 270 court is the highest of all of those. So we are right in the bed of what's going on with it. Historically, what we tended to find is R&D type facilities would be located in the Rockville, Gaithersburg, 270 end of, south end of the 270, and more of the manufacturing further north. That tended to be because they figured that the higher paid people were living down at this part of the world, and that the employees could come down, and the manufacturing wanted to be on the less expensive land. Over the last 2 or 3 years in particular, we've seen a huge crossover. There's a lot of R&D work going on up in Frederick because they find that there's a lot of qualified people that are living up there. And we're starting to see biomanufacturing slide down the 270 corridor. We did some projects in Twin Brook that people are actually looking to put some GMP facilities in that area as well. So it's a lot more diverse of what's there. So we actually think this is a good location. One of the key things that's happened over the last 2 years in this sort of post-COVID world, and if I haven't heard it 1,000 times from every broker I talk to, speed to market. Ever since COVID hit, everybody is worried about how can we either convert space to make it life science ready, or how can we go ahead and do a ground up building. Monument has actually taken the lead over any of the clients that we're aware of in the area in really coming up with those ground up building. They already had some things that were planned for a while, but Monument and what they're doing here sort of got in front of the curve. They're hopeful to stay in that position. They took the risk and they're in a good position like that. People should recognize that in this market, vacancy rates for life sciences are approximately 0. People get gobbled up right away. So it is a popular product. Again, this is out of Old Home Week. I was here 6 weeks ago on another project in front of the Planning Commission. The other reason it's Old Home is we, DNC, designed the IBM project, or we didn't design it, we were the project architect for that back in the 60s. So I was not on that job, but I was up the street going to high school at Gainesboro Road, but anyhow. Can we go back to slide 5? Wanted to sort of just start off with a little bit of a regional site analysis because it's somewhat relevant to how we've tried to set up the building. Basically, this building, when we looked at it, we cannot find any good view of this building from 270. So it's really a much more regional type of location. It is not a 270 location. But it's got great access, it's got great visibility. As soon as somebody gets off the highway, they're on the overpass over 270, and at the intersection of 355 and Watkins Mill, it's going to have really good access as well, or good visibility there. So we like the way it's set. We like the location at the north end of Gaithersburg because it's going to mean that people can get in and out of here with a whole lot less traffic than happens on the lower 2 exits. So we think it's going to be attractive to tenants from that perspective. Talking just briefly about the site plan itself. There's a lot of green to the north of this project. Majority of that is right of way, so we do not control it. There is, as mentioned before, the old IBM substation to our east. The building it's sitting on the site. It is a relatively densely developed suburban site. The things that are unique to a life science building that are important and very important to tenants looking at the building. Obviously, they want a good front door. They want a good front door image. That's important to them. Good loading docks and good loading is important. They have large trucks. It's not just once or twice for move-in. It is continuous. They have stuff coming in on tractor trailers, on pallet trucks. So loading is a very important aspect of them. Also, a lot of the major tenants will have other, quote, junk. It could be transformers, it could be storage tanks, it could be nitrogen tanks. There's a lot of stuff that life science tenants need to have. We've tried to create a yard, a service yard to the northeast corner of our building where we can accommodate a lot of that. So our base building, generator, and our transformers are in that service yard, and it's our intention that the remaining space be kept available for tenant equipment that might come in. We have no idea what it is. We're just guessing that it's going to happen because it tends to happen on almost all projects. Okay, the building itself, which people said is what I'm here to talk about. The building from our perspective is meant to be a first-class image building. It wants to stand out. It is being built out of metal panels, an insulated metal panel system that for the architects in the group know that it's a system that gives us our air barriers, our thermal barriers, and our waterproof membranes all in one system. So it's a very continuous approach. The building is meant to be slightly reflective to really maintain sort of a sleek and contemporary appearance. We have sort of a two-tone primary skin of the building, then we have a base element that's broken up with a colonnade that's not a real colonnade because we didn't want to waste the space because there's really not a whole lot of pedestrian traffic going across at that location. But wants to sort of allow the building to have a base and a top to it. One of the other things that's somewhat important to some of the members in the Planning Commission, this is a very green building. Not only is it meeting the IGCC standards, which anybody who's worked in those knows they're a pain in the butt to deal with, but it's also going through and likely going to be a LEED Gold project. So it's the objective is of the developer is to really make this a very green facility in terms of going forward with it. As a spec lab building, some aspects of it look like a good spec office building. There are certain differences. From a good office building standpoint, we work with long span structure, so we basically have 40 feet from the skin of the building to the interior columns, so it makes it very flexible for what happens on the inside. The cross bay spacing is 22 feet on center, which is different than an office building, because that works in a lab harmonic. We end up, this building, when we get to the typical floor, you'll see it's a 3-stair building, so we can end up having quarter floor tenants without having to run a quarter down back and forth in the building. As I said, we gave a priority to being able to bring the loading directly into the building. There was an intention to do that, to marry the loading up against the rear service entrance rather than letting it come in on the east end, because we did not want to break it into predefined a small tenant suite over on the east end of the building. So the loading area is married up tight to the building, and we have direct access into a service elevator that would allow equipment to get up onto the floors. When you look at the typical floor, it's a 3-stair building. It has a small central core, a lot of empty space. As a general rule, we will find that the actual population of this building is probably going to be about half of what it would be as an office environment, but it's designed to meet office live loads and egress capacity. The building is set up day one that we have DOAS, which is dedicated outside air systems that supply air coming into the space, so that we have a flexible way of getting the conditioned air down into the tenant. One of the things different in most life sciences buildings from a typical office is the tenants tend to pay for all of their own utilities. So what we try to end up with is a situation where we can really meter almost everything that the tenant uses. So we actually have VRF systems that will actually control the individual spaces within the tenant areas. We'll then have the exhaust fans coming out directly metered to the tenant space as well. And the DOAS does get allocated between the tenants. So we have 4 DOAS units on the roof of the building. They're fed down through shafts that go in day one. We also have planned for and structurally are set up to accommodate a large number of larger shafts to get exhaust up and out of the building. We don't exactly know the size of those. Those will be planned for and allowed and worked into the tenant improvements as they go forward. Another important end of the building, again, it's the service end of the building, is the roof. On the roof to begin with, we will have a small penthouse because we wanted to allow people doing work on the roof to have a staircase to go up rather than to have to go up a ship's ladder or something like that. We'll have 4 large DOAS units in the center of the roof that will go in day one. We'll have a concrete slab under those to make sure that we have good sound isolation between those units and the space below it. We have then space allocated for the VRF units and exhaust fans, trying to keep them as far apart as possible because you have a stratification issue. We don't want to be taking in the exhaust air into the outside air intakes. So we've got the building set up that way. At either end of the building are spaces where we're expecting that the piping that will come up to the roof will be able to penetrate the roof and come up through essentially a doghouse, so that the penetrations come out on a horizontal side rather than a vertical side to, again, minimize risks of what's there. So we've tried to work in the tricks that we know are going to be required to allow this building to morph over the next 20, 30 years of its useful life, because these are heavy working buildings. The equipment that goes into them, not just the benches and the casework and things like that, but also just the systems to support it. The fit-up costs here are extensive. I don't know if you want to talk about the elevations, but if you do, I can, but most people tend to look at, okay, that's an elevation. And that really sort of takes you to the end of the presentation. If I've missed anything, or if you have any questions and answers, be glad to talk to you about them and try to give you the best responses.
There's some fundamentals I'd like you to cover. It's a little bit about site planning, it's a little bit about architecture, but there's something about the site that and this building that don't quite jive yet, and I want to understand some of the decisions that went into how you sited the building. So let me give you the big ideas, and you can tell me how they figure into what you guys decided. The first is, and these guys have written into it, if you imagine a user or a tenant or an employee of these businesses wanting to take advantage, as you said, of a mixed-use environment, they want to leave the building and be pointed directly at what those amenities are and have a safe and reasonable and interesting path to get there. And so the front door of this and arrival is something that happens kind of when you get off the street, not necessarily when you find the front door. So right now, its backside is facing the main road, and its second backside is facing the other main road. And the front door is way around the side, way around the back from where they would likely be, if they want to go out to lunch or they want to do something after work or they want to, whatever, head over to Spectrum. And things like the loading dock facing Watkins Mill seems a little counterintuitive, but I also know there's some site constraints that would have driven that, that calculation. So just kind of take it apart. If you were a pedestrian or user and you wanted the best possible way to come and go from the building, in my mind, it would be kind of off on the north, northeast, northwest side, whatever. Actually, I may have the north arrow wrong, but it would be facing Watkins Mill or be facing kind of that direction. And if you were doing a loading dock, I wouldn't think it would be on the same side. But take us through that.
Okay, I'll do the best I can. It is a very, very tight site. There is not a lot of space for either sidewalks and or green area. The way the site has been developed and the size of the building. We stopped at a 4-story building rather than letting it get taller, simply because the HVAC systems are easier. If we'd gone to 5 stories, we maybe could have shrunk the footprint down slightly. But from a building perspective, it's a lot better for life science building to stop at 4 stories. You can go past that, but that tends to be a preferred height. So working with the development program, what Monument wanted to get on the site, we ended up with a relatively large building on a relatively tight site from what's there. I think Matt mentioned it earlier, that this building is set up essentially as a suburban office building. We're assuming the majority of the employees are coming to work by their cars and walking in the front door. We do not really have much in terms of setup, in terms of either parking or access coming directly from the north side of the building. It's set up really with the south side access for pedestrians. There is the ability to walk around the site. ADA actually comes around even further. It goes from the street, goes up the main entry drive, crosses the driveways, and comes back in because of the grades that are on the site. But access to the north and getting across the street to Spectrum is not easy from directly on the site itself. There's part of that's also tied in with the substation that's still there. That sort of blocks the space that would be the logical connection point, but that's not yet gone. To me, that would be an ideal location to be able to allow something to happen over there and get across at the main street, the main intersection on 355. Because that's in the direction, as you said, to the northeast.
Yeah, I don't see it though. I mean, I still don't understand the constraint that would not allow for a really generous and deliberate, user entrance on the north side, even if it wasn't the real front door, but some way to connect the main lobby back through and create a really legitimate access point back there, or a non-circuitous way to get from the front door to Spectrum Drive without having to, go around the corner, because there's actually even a corner condition there that seemed to be logical, unless you're having topography issues or you're having grade changes that are impossible to reconcile. Same thing with the east side, getting from say just the front door, and walking over to the linear park. It in plan anyway, it looks like there are much more direct ways to do all these things, and I haven't quite heard what the site constraints are that would preclude that.
We were not responsible for the design of the site, so I can't answer all of those questions. From our perspective, as I said, to get to Spectrum, I think in the ultimate future would be the best to run something out through where the substation is. We did study trying to come in from the north and make that more of an entrance. We started to run into some grade issues when trying to create a handicapped access, because once they make that a real entrance, and I also have to let that be ADA accessible. And we had some issues in terms of getting the grading to work within the public right-of-way to come up to our property to go through there. And so that's why the handicapped access does wrap around the building, because there were some grade challenges that happened there to the northwest.
Okay. All right, well, we'll get into that more, I guess. Any other questions?
No, the architecture.
No? Okay. Is that the whole presentation, or is it? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, we would just make ourselves available to have a dialogue with you.
Sure, sure. What I need to do is flip over to the virtual, and I will say it as I'm doing that. We're going to hear from the public if there is anyone that would like to. And I don't think there's anybody here in the chambers that's from the public. Just a hunch. And I'm trying to get to my my screen that shows the public. There it goes. Oh, the first one didn't. It wasn't the next one.
Keep hitting until you hit
Yeah.
digital.
Okay, so, tech staff, please let me know. It looks like we have no attendees, and only 2 panelists, which would be folks that are on for the presentation, is that right?
That's correct. Looks like there's no attendees on
Okay.
Virtually. But
So-
I'll keep an eye on it and let you know if someone does
Okay, let me
show
know,
up.
yeah, and so seeing that, I won't even ask them to play the message right now. And having nobody in the chambers who looks like they're ready to testify on this. Yes,
If I might, Mr. Mauer, and apropos of the comment you just made, since we are the only agenda item this evening, and since time is critical to us, if you see some things that you think need to be refined, we'd like the opportunity to discuss them with you tonight and try and work them out tonight, rather than be
sure.
deferred and come back.
oh yeah, we're not gonna keep this
Perfect.
arm's length,
That's
yeah.
because
I just wanna make sure I hit the
you got us
scope.
all night until we get something we'll agree upon.
You don't have us all night, so.
And I will ask one other thing, that's maybe overly, but this is the attorney. Mr. Schlichting mentioned that maybe there's a city rule now, Frank, that you'd like us all to be sworn in as witnesses?
That's under some discussion, and that'll be something I bring up.
Okay.
But certainly we could do that tonight. I actually think if we had some the issue is something that's under discussion that I'll bring up maybe at the end.
Okay, let's do it then.
So we can really deal with it at
That's
that
fair.
time. It's really not a.
Our record's good.
Shouldn't
for
be a
now.
major issue tonight.
Our
No,
record's good.
It's also not been raised before, and
Okay.
it's something that's also waived if it's not raised.
Okay,
I'm sorry if I brought it up prematurely, but
That's
we
quite
certainly
all right.
have no problem with being sworn if you need us to do so.
okay, thank you. All right, so, having no interest from the public on this one, Chris, why don't you go ahead and do the formal recommendation, please?
Of course. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission, based on the exhibits submitted, the staff report, findings, and recommendation, grant SP 9199-2022 final site plan approval, finding it in conformance with Section 24-170 and Section 24-171 of the city's zoning ordinance with 6 conditions.
Great, thank you. Any questions on the recommended?
I guess I do have another question from the applicant.
What's that?
I guess I do have another question from the applicant,
Yeah,
for the applicant. It might be a question from Monument. So in the right-of-way, what are our constraints there? It's obviously hardscape's okay. I don't see a lot of planting. but-
We're talking about the right-of-way to the north of our site between Watkins
Yeah,
Mill and our
Watkins
site.
Mill curb to the property line.
There's some grading in the way, and it kind of falls off steeply after our site, so we are actually grading within the county right-of-way. We're getting the county permits to do so, to grade back to that bus station and Watkins Mill Road. So one of the things that we did originally look at was a path to get us directly to Watkins Mill Road, and it required you to like zigzag back and forth 4 or 5 times, which we did not think was an attractive or really a very usable solution in this area.
About planting in that area. What other kind of constraints do they have in that right of way?
a PUE or something?
So I
There is a PUV, yes. So we can't,
Yeah.
there is a PUE just north of where we're showing plantings. Our plantings actually go right up to the PUE, and we wouldn't be permitted to plant in that location. And Ryan's right, we did have an access coming from the bus stop, but it resulted in a several switchback ramp situation, since that would need to be ADA compliant, because we wouldn't be able to provide an able-bodied route
Yeah.
without the ADA compliant
Can
route.
you, while that picture's up, don't take it down, when you say bus stop, where are you, just give me a general sense of where that
That
is.
white,
yeah.
that right
Right
there.
there, okay.
That's a bus stop.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, so we've got a recommendation. We're going to move into discussion, but I will say right up front, and Mr. Klein, to your point, we're going to feel free to discuss with you, I think, some of these issues, so it'll look a little bit like question and answer. And
Please do.
if that raises, and I'll just say this for anybody that might be listening, if that raises concerns or somebody does want to log in and testify before we close the record, please feel free to do that. You'll see the, or we'll see you on the attendee list on the virtual. So I don't know if anybody's listening, but if they are, then feel free to do that, and we'll recognize it before we finish this up, especially if this discussion raises any more concerns. All right, so let me start with some general things. Thank you for the parking analysis and the explanation about how the shared parking field and what the impact of those numbers and calculations are. I think it makes sense. We have favored shared parking more than not, so even if it were short by calculation, I'm not sure that would be anything we'd be too concerned about, because it's apparent that there's plenty of parking on the site based on your calculations, so I'm not that concerned. And I think I side with Matt on this concept that, and I hope you feel free to comment as well, that we've compromised the potential for a spine road through the three sites, an internal spine road with the subsequent development of those three sites independently. That's a little concern to me at this point, given the different uses and the fact that with Watkins Mill open, we want to drive most of this traffic down 355 anyway. We don't want a lot of cut-through traffic. We want people to go where they need to go. But having said that, I think what we do need to do is be very careful about what we've established for pedestrian and bicycle traffic pathways that make sense and are intuitive and are connected and encourage the use of bikes and walking through these sites, because ultimately they will sort of depend on each other for some use and for some enjoyment and all of those things. So I know we're going to focus our discussion on that to make sure that makes sense for this site. And then finally, I do want to spend some time, and I mean, first of all, it's obviously a high quality building. You know, it makes a lot of sense that we're answering the call and the demand in the market for life science space, and it's great to see that we have the opportunity to do that here. So I think in general, it's a great use for the site and something we want to encourage. But I am a little concerned that it's a bit of a generic solution for a site that has some weird constraints to it. So I don't think being efficient necessarily means that we have to turn our back on some of those subtleties about pedestrian connections, visibility, all those sorts of things. And I hope we can get to some sort of an answer on some of those with this discussion. But and I don't think, you know, in fundamental terms, that the programming for the building or the workable dimensions and the efficient use of how it's been set up is going to be compromised. I think this is about some detailed stuff that maybe we can influence in this course. Any other concerns from the commission? Please.
If I can, you know, I don't know if tech team can bring up package page 114, which is the sort of rendered concept preliminary plan, site plan. You know, this is one of the things that we're judging this application against, is the approved intent of the former plans, the earlier stage plans. And recognizing and not necessarily disagreeing with a number of the constraints you all talked about, you know, I'll wait for the tech team to.
We have control of it, actually, so I'm trying to pull it up for you right now.
Okay. Yep, right there. Oh, it was on the screen. Comparing the siting and the landscaping and the pedestrian connectivity and all the intent for this site that was approved at this stage to what we have now, there are some massive differences. One of those is clearly driven by the fact that we don't have a structured parking garage on site. And so, obviously, I was not on the commission when this was approved. I'd like if you could clarify or fill us in on, like, what is driving us? What is preventing us from having that structured parking? Is it because the other buildings aren't there? We don't need it yet. You know, help us out with that.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. So this building, and I think some additional context to Jody's original introduction. So the original building, OB3, was approved for 260,000 square feet of density at 3.33 per thousand parking ratio, typical of office buildings. This building had not gone forward for a number of reasons, one of which was there was no need for new spec office,
Yep.
and it did not make financial sense. One of the things that got it over the threshold to make financial sense was the fact that we took off about 115,000 square feet of density And because we were doing a life science targeted user base, we were able to amend the annexation agreement a fourth time to allow a reduced parking ratio, minimum parking ratio requirement, down to 1.5. So rather than needing the parking garage, we are now able to build all 4 buildings' requirements for parking on the site, which was, again, one of the big things that kind of helped push this project forward to fruition. And I have the numbers here. The difference was, so again, previously the parking requirement was 3.3 per thousand on the 260, so it was over 850 parking spaces. Now we only need the 214 total amongst the shared parking for our building. So we've reduced it by 600 parking spaces, which has reduced the need for that parking structure.
Okay, but if and when OB2 gets constructed,
Yep,
we're going to need a parking garage.
we will not.
No.
I guess to phrase this another way, we've traded density
Yes.
for paving more of the site. Saving money on a parking garage, but we're covering more green area with asphalt to avoid doing the parking garage.
We are putting yes, in a sense, we're also putting parking on what was going to be that main road to the west side of the parking garage.
Which is now all green area.
Currently it is paved sidewalk and green area, yes. Yeah.
So I think that's like point number 1 when you go back to this approved rendered concept plan. OB3 had almost no parking around it. It was all surrounded by landscape on 3 of the 4 sides because we had structured parking. So that's compromise number 1 that I think is hurting this plan from a site planning standpoint. I understand the logic behind it. Point 2 is what we've all been talking about and I think harping on more than anything is there are some very clear intentional things on this concept plan regarding pedestrian connectivity, having a 2-sided building, 2 similar if not equally weighted entrances, connections from the path along 355 that are really non-existent in the plan that's before us for review. And so I think we've got to figure out a way to address those. Recognizing grading is an issue, but right now the architecture of the building actually supports 2 entrances. If you look at the elevation, they're basically the same, with the difference that the north elevation has stairs and the south elevation doesn't. So it feels like a site planning issue that could be addressed.
But even if you respected that and sort of capitalized on the fact there's a big center entrance on the north side of the building, the walkway could still wander its way west and pick up Spectrum. At least it would be on the side intuitive to where you're headed, as opposed to coming out and trying to snake all the way around the building.
Yeah.
I point 3 here.
I think the only point 3 is the one that John made about the loading, and that was my initial reaction. Is that's from a site planning perspective, not the best place to put the loading. On the other hand, when looking at the elevation, understanding that those are seem to be depressed docks, not fully at grade. I think those could be handled, be it landscaping, screening, other things, and not compromise the function of the building. It's not ideal, but it's certainly not a deal breaker there. So again, coming back to the point that I think this is a lot less about building architecture concerns than it is site planning, screening, pedestrian circulation. Is everything.
I'm kind of crazy sympathetic. I'll just tag on and say, I think all that's correct. Analysis with a little bit of history. So if we get to where we are today, I'm very sympathetic to sort of locating the big loading docks right at the core. I'm sympathetic to having a big yard. Whatever it is that biotech needs, I think we ought to prepare for it now and not have to come back for a minute site plan or whatever god awful thing. So let's plan for it now. I get all that. I think that's great. I do wish it was on the other side of the building or on the end of the building, but I think I get it. So the problem now is what do we do with it? So I think for me it's pretty simple. We need to fix all these pathways. So understanding you can't have a straight shot from the back door to the bus stop because of grade. I get that.
Without an extensive switchback, yes.
So, but the actual primary path is from that back door to the corner that crosses Watkins, right? I assume, and I'm usually right, that's actually going to be the prime pathway. That's going to be where people that go for lunch, that's where they're going to be crossing. They're going to get the world famous World Farms chicken or whatever it is they're doing. So it's, I think it's a great pathway, and it's going to be the deer trail, right? So we need to figure out how, almost as direct as possible, how to get those folks over there. So if they have to come down to the end of those parking spaces and get right across that drive aisle and get, down to the sidewalk that crosses Watkins, maybe that's the right path. And then I think the same respect goes to the other side, to the east side. So coming out and around, and I think going through the existing mature trees is fantastic. That's a fantastic way to walk your way to lunch, right?
I think that connection is an obvious one. I think that we can clearly make the connection from the east sidewalk we're proposing to the trail. I think that one we can provide.
And
without
I would
any real
just,
issues.
thank you, that's great. And I think I would just double down on it, say it needs some landscaping, right? So we're going to treat it with pedestrian prioritization, however we want to say it. We want to make it really nice.
Mm-hmm.
We want to make that, I need to blow off some steam, I need to think, I want to walk to get my lunch, it's a beautiful day, and it needs to be a nice walk. So some additional landscaping to make that an actual nice walk.
But in all this discussion of pathways, it is also about being a good neighbor. So you've got to imagine what the hotel guest is going to do when they want to walk over to that side.
Yeah.
You have to imagine what OB2 will ultimately do and want to snake their way up to the intersection. I mean, those are all going to be part of the overall network anyway. Or maybe at some point OB2 goes to OB3. I mean, you never know, right? There could be this.
Yeah, what a great spot for a Y connection of sidewalks that comes from hotel or, from that horizontal east to west path that's on the other side of the drive aisle, whatever, we're not calling it a street, whatever we're calling it, so we can park, whatever we're calling it on the south side of that. Have those two Ys come in and put a bench or two in there, put a trash can there. This may be you and not her, but we need to figure out.
So you're talking
It's all
about,
very directed.
you're talking about where the linear
Actually-
park currently runs that
No,
little
if
connection
you
path south of the
Go
substation?
to your plan, go to the actual plan. I think we're going to get a little bit distracted if we keep seeing the old plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're talking about adding it in from basically like where the new path extension starts, due west to where that clump of trees is to connect with the
That's
the
one.
connection there.
Yeah.
That's one,
That's
and I
one.
think the Chair's point is that if you bring something from,
Just
on
leave that.
the south side of that drive aisle,
Yeah.
that common drive aisle, there's a walk that goes all the way across that, right?
No, that's the other
Oh,
problem.
it stops at that. It'll stop at the
There's some
dumpster.
really awkward, paths to nowhere, and that's a problem.
Yeah, that doesn't exist today. We were adding that in to create additional connectivity to the front of our building. Yes.
Yeah.
But what you do owe the rest of the site is a way to come down Spectrum Boulevard and walk, let's just say, to the hotel.
Yep.
As a way to think about, moments on the site, that's important.
To me, it's an easy, not a lot of concrete, fairly gentle, Y that comes from that hotel connection, right? That's there, and the east side new
Yep.
office connection. You get a nice Y that comes out to your trail. You put a bench in there, you put a trash can in there. It's really nice, a little bit of landscaping. It's gorgeous, right? It's a real.
But Matt, look at say you leave the hotel,
Mhm.
and you
Yeah.
want to walk to Spectrum,
Spectrum,
and you don't
right.
want to walk on 335, you want to go up to Spectrum Boulevard
Yeah.
too. How do you do it?
Yeah,
Right.
that I have no idea.
Okay.
So there's a dumpster there. I think the dumpster.
It is a very large
There's
dumpster.
a dumpster.
So there is at the.
There's a front door, there's a sidewalk.
Well,
What I'm
just
getting
to
at.
the, I think.
But to get
there-
from their front door to our
There's no
proposed
wall.
sidewalk going towards Spectrum is a very large dumpster enclosure.
Yeah, so I think their best bet is to come out that back door, which I think they have. And are we islanded across? We're not.
No.
No, we're not. Yeah. So that really nice, actually, whatever it is, 90
But that's what
foot
I'm
wide
leading up to
green
is that.
down the
if-
middle. Is
But
unusable.
see, but let me be clear. You've established this new sidewalk on the south side.
Yeah.
I mean, what
Yeah.
what precludes, you've reconfigured the parking, you've rethought how the drive aisle works. What precludes having a wide enough median in the parking aisle to create the sidewalk up the middle there and share it between the two sites? I don't actually know. I mean, the sidewalk or the curb that establishes the southernmost edge or the northern edge of the parking field behind the hotel, that all is gonna be new anyway, right? That's all gonna be kind of reestablished and repoured? Is
Yeah,
that- is
it's
that
all
right?
new
Which,
island.
which part are you
Which-
asking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard without pointing, okay, look at your rendered site plan.
Yep.
The trees and the green space you've colored in, the southernmost portion of that, and your new sidewalk, you see that right there?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
that's all new curb and gutter work, right?
No, that's
No.
there today.
Okay,
Those are just new plantings.
Okay.
all right.
So really, our only compromise is trying to get from that sidewalk that's at the base of the hotel
Right.
through the dumpster.
Can I ask
The dumpster was problematic,
Yeah,
absolutely.
dumpster's
To give you some context, the green hatched area that's laid on top of the aerial, the outline of that is our LOD. So
Okay.
anything outside of that, we're not touching.
Yeah, and that was going to be my point of clarification. I'm looking at package page 82, which is the site phasing plan. What we're talking about, replacing that green area that runs north-south, the old future street with a parked aisle, that's not part of this plan, is that correct?
Correct.
That's labeled as phase 4, we're talking about phase 3.
Correct. That
So
would
that-
be under the OB2
They
construction.
need another building to justify.
Yeah, so we're not gonna,
We don't need that until OB3
Okay.
is,
I did-
or OB2.
that's, that I think has sort of been in sort of no man's land in our discussion here. So I want to make sure we're clear on that.
Yeah, but go ahead, put that plan back up. I guess that what I'm getting at is if the sidewalk on the southernmost portion of this proposed plan isn't really going anywhere anyway, why is it there?
Right.
The intention was to replace the sidewalk that's on the north side of that drive aisle that we are removing. And the reason we're removing it is to meet the parking requirements, which was the primary site constraint that we've been referring to,
Yeah,
was
yeah.
to meet the surface parking requirements.
That's fine.
Really
I just mean-
drove
but
everything.
just, back away from this and think about people using this stuff. Is it in the right place, or is it even needed at that point?
Most people, able-bodied people, if they're walking from that hotel corner to Spectrum Avenue, will walk towards the substation, walk west in front of our building, and then take the crosswalk across that drive aisle to the west of our building, down a set of stairs, and you're halfway down Spectrum Avenue already.
Yeah.
The lower portion was created to, I believe, make an ADA accessible alternative route to that point.
I think the reality is that most able-bodied people, if they're trying to get to the hotel over in Spectrum, are going to walk along the road and dodge between the cars until they get to the corner.
Like not take the stairway halfway
Yeah,
down.
nobody, unless you've got neon signs lighting the way, no guest from the hotel is going to know that path even exists. They're going to walk out the back door, say, I want to go over there, and they're going to weave between cars.
We actually talked about that a lot with Greg, and we put a sign at each corner to direct to help people wayfind that around that problem.
I think we're trying to solve a $100,000 site planning problem with $50 in signs, and it's not going to work.
All right, so,
Well, I think the other, just before, so we don't lose it, my only other concern was the same on the loading dock issue, is we've got at least 15 feet there before we get to property line, and I'm assuming we can,
We don't, because there's the PUE.
uh,
The PUE is not shown. The
Oh, I
PUE is
see.
inboard of that property
No,
line.
I see it now, yeah.
So if you were to draw a line behind that row of shrubs, that's where the PUE is.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. Yeah. No, I'm looking at C-270 now.
okay. All right. I don't think we're done with the circulation yet, but I want to ask a quick question, just sort of time check and discussion flow here. Are there any other issues that we want to hit besides the pedestrian pathway and the pedestrian network?
The only other thing I will say is, on that north side of the building, I didn't even notice it on the plan until I looked at some of the architectural elevations. There is, on the other side of the drive aisle from your entrance, there's a little sort of hatched area that's hatched with some squiggly lines. Am I correct that that is an enclosed recycling dumpster area?
On the north side of the driveway.
On the north side of the driveway, in that little corner, it's what's on the screen here, it's right to the right of that big tree.
The parking spaces end, and then there's a screened dumpster enclosure and recycling.
Yep.
bin.
So that, when you, on some of the architectural elevations from the north, thankfully, you could have cut your elevation to make that disappear, but you didn't, so I realized it was there. It's I mean, it's a stockade fence, right?
Proposed right now.
Yes.
And why is that not somehow integrated with the big yard on the northeast corner?
We wanted it to be close to the north entrance and the loading dock where people would probably be bringing the trash out. And we're happy to screen it however works best for you guys.
It also had to do with the circulation pattern.
Right.
And getting the trucks in and out of it.
Okay. Yeah.
And the angle we could achieve coming around the circulation path into the generator area.
What's the future of the substation?
So the substation has been decommissioned. The substation equipment is actually owned by Matten since they own the southern portion of the IBM parcel. The FedEx building and the Matten property have both been approved and connecting to the lines along 355. So Matten has actually decommissioned the substation. We are getting rid of the easements that allow people to access the substation, and Matten is planning to decommission the equipment itself, like get rid of the equipment itself over the next few years.
Demo the whole thing.
Yeah, once they get rid of the equipment, I mean, the corporate center condominium owns the land, so we could demolish it at that point. And it's really just, it's a couple retaining walls and a gravel lot.
Yeah. And would that be developable as a place for dumpsters, parking, whatever it is?
Presumably, yes.
Okay.
But we just can't show it that way because we don't currently control that area.
Okay.
And I would add park and other things to that list of potential uses, but so yeah, I think as we've done in some other the life sciences buildings in the area, immediate area, that dumpster enclosure needs to reflect the building. So materials coming down off that facade into that enclosure, we wanted to same with whatever detailing needs to go around that service yard. So if there is anything in there that can be screened, let's screen it.
Mm-hmm.
And it needs to be integrated into the architecture of the building, which really just means materials, right?
We don't, the building has a split-face masonry base. I'd much prefer to use that to screen than to use the metal panels, because metal panels don't really land well on the site.
Yeah, just whatever's on the building, yeah.
I
Integrated
just
into
don't
the
want to,
architecture of the
I don't
building.
want you to tell me you're expecting a metal panel screen.
I'll probably still tell you that anyway, but.
Okay, thank you.
I'll take split face masonry over
Yeah.
insulated metal panel any day of the week.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. So, yeah, the whole base of the building is masonry, right?
So I may sound like I'm confused or don't understand, but I want to get back to these pedestrian paths. Let's start at the front door. Go out the front door, and you head towards Spectrum Boulevard, okay? Right now, the walkway gets to the drive aisle, and then it turns to the right and goes up to the middle of the building, middle of the end of the building, and then crosses the drive aisle. Which, again, seems sort of counterintuitive to me. It seems like it should just go straight across the drive aisle once it gets to it. Why doesn't it?
I think it's a grading issue. There's a couple feet of elevation change as you drive south along that western drive aisle, going around to the back of the building. So if you were to cross there and say enter at the bioretention area, which is in orange,
Yep.
you would be falling off a cliff. Not falling off a cliff, but it'd be a
a
great
large
problem.
staircase. As it is, that sidewalk farther north has several stairs, 2 or 3, and it would be a significant number of stairs.
Heading
cross
down
there.
to
Heading down to Spectrum.
Spectrum. Okay, interesting. All right, so then, in that case, if you were to cross up farther north, never mind the fact that the curb comes within a couple of feet of the corner of the building, but if you were to cross there, are you getting closer to at grade with the crossing to Spectrum?
You're getting there, yes. I mean, to put it into context, the finished floor of the building, or the first floor where you come out, is about 426. And at Spectrum, at that intersection with the existing sidewalk, you're looking at about 417.
It's about 9 feet.
Okay. That continues to make the argument that there should be a primary user entrance, guest entrance, tenant entrance, whatever you want to call them, coming out of the back of the building or the north side of the building, which is really another front. It's not a back. I mean, it really has a front elevation quality that then takes you across that little bit of parking and up to the corner of Watkins and Spectrum. I mean, I think it's, there's just no way around it. That's just the most common sense way to think about this diagram.
I mean, on the north face of the building, there is you come out of the building about 3 feet above the parking grade, because, again, we're trying to make the loading docks work, but you come out, you're on a plinth or a little plaza, and then there's a staircase and ramp that goes down off of that. So there is a pedestrian entrance. There's a 6-foot double door coming out of the building on that side.
And I think he's just advocating that goes to Spectrum. eventually.
So the
in
sidewalk,
most
you work-
direct path possible.
You work out how you make
Yeah.
the sidewalks work to get up to the intersection, you work out how there's a ramp back there because you want it to be accessible, not necessarily accessible, or you do want it accessible in technical terms, but also just for somebody who can't do stairs. You want it to be an easy and quick way to come out of the building. The bus stop's back there, amenities are back there, everything's back there that
Yeah.
people who walk will want and need.
And I think, if we could just connect that, and I understand there's still a challenge there, so maybe it's not 9 feet, maybe it's, 4 or something, so there's still some kind of challenge there, but let's do our best to figure that out from a grading standpoint.
Yeah, we already have, what, 6, 8 steps out the back of the building, so we're going from a 9 feet difference down to a 4 feet.
Well, this is dropping too.
Well, then it
so-
continues to drop down to Watkins
Yeah,
Mill.
right.
So it drops further.
Yeah, so we, somewhere in there, we're getting to something that should be solvable, and some of that may be lowering the grade back there and putting in a little retaining, having to support that first floor, whatever the case may be. And then we may lose a parking spot or two there too, if we need to, pull it out a bit or whatever, I don't know.
Well, we've got 4 to play with, so.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, I mean, four would also give us, a tree or two at the entry back there and make it feel a little bit more loved.
Well, the problem with that is there's an existing electrical and telecom duct bank that runs pretty much where that dotted line is,
Yes.
which prohibits trees.
Okay, so at the very least, it could be a small planting and a bench, right? So it could be something else could be back there that makes it, when you come out the back, you don't feel like you're at the loading dock. You
How do
feel
you
like
about a
you're
potted plant? Well, I mean, architecturally it could be done.
could be a potted plant, yeah.
No, but architecturally, there could be stuff done with
Yeah.
the screening at the
There
bay.
is a screen wall to the west of the loading docks, so that when you come out the back door of the building,
You don't see
there's a screen wall that comes up, I think it's about 6-7 feet off from the
Right,
grade.
and the level of finish and the detailing can feel like a pedestrian environment, not just screen it from view from
It's
a
finished
mile.
with the same materials that were the base of the building. It's the same split face block right now.
Well, maybe
Good.
it should.
So let's grow it, let's light it,
Yeah.
let's put benches on it, let's put, trash can there, let's
Pedestrians.
potted plants are great, and we don't mean potted plants, we mean potted plants.
All right, so you get the gist of this, and I think what I'm gonna propose, we put a condition in the approval that staff work with the applicant to work through the details of this, but the spirit of this is that we turn the entrance on the north side of the building and the pathways to Spectrum in a substantial way in a much more pedestrian-oriented character, and it's gonna include sidewalks, it's gonna include detailing. If they're gonna brush their shoulder against it, it can't be something that is just an industrial split-face block. It's gotta be something friendlier. It's gotta be, benches and planters and textures and materials that make sense at a pedestrian scale.
Throw
But
some light at it, throw some
We
light
have
at it.
samples we can show staff.
Staff can work within that. And then the other piece to this is, let's not do something silly with the sidewalks on the south end, on the south side. The objective would be connectivity with the linear park, with the hotel, with ultimately walking all the way through to the rest of the developments that's happened south of here. We haven't really talked about that, but again, the original vision was that there was really good connectivity, at least for pedestrians, if not also for bikes. And if we don't get cars, we still need to make sure that that's happening. And not in convoluted ways that have you going around things and following signs, but very direct and very intuitive pathways. We didn't really get into that tonight, so I don't know, the alignment of where you decide to cross the new access road or the old access road that's been converted to parking. That should make sense with what happens south of here. And the that little leg that runs east-west on the southern side, that doesn't seem to go anywhere or be of any use to anybody. But, if it was integrated with something that ended up all the way over to the east side with the linear park, maybe it does make sense. So that to me is another piece of this that I think staff can work with you on to resolve.
Yeah, it's like 250 feet shy of a thought. Like it's almost a thought, but it's like there's missing a piece.
But by the
I know
same
there's a dumpster in the way, but still.
Yeah, but by the same token, if it doesn't work, don't show people where to walk and then don't take them anywhere. The other thing is that could be a much richer landscape edge, and you don't walk there. It's a landscape. It's a much better feature in terms of an edge and a buffer. That's okay too, and then get the pedestrian to work their way in a different way, in a different pathway.
And for me, that's a tertiary issue. Secondary issue is the eastern connection. And even if it doesn't actually connect to this other sidewalk, which would make perfect sense. But even if it doesn't, that's still a higher priority to me than a sidewalk that goes to nowhere,
Right.
sort of silly as it is. But,
Right.
yeah. So if this is necessary for some kind of, ADA need, then, and we can't, for whatever reason with the hotel or whatever's going on, you just don't want to plow that last 200 feet through, can't do it. We should be very consciously saying we could have done something nice here and didn't, couldn't, wouldn't. But at least let's get that eastern connection and then the north side of this building connected.
Question, how important is maintaining that southern sidewalk if we're putting if we're letting the sidewalk on the north face of the building that is going to come in? Quite frankly, at that point, ADA is going to dictate that we make that an accessible access point. The only reason the sidewalks were crossing it, going to the south side of that driveway and looping back across, was to make an ADA connection. Do you feel that that's important to have? 'Cause
I don't know what your question was. So you're saying, do we need ADA accesses? Yes.
No,
Do you
I'm
have
not
to make the
asking
rear?
that.
Do you have to
DJ
make the
tells me
rear
that.
to a flat lobby, both entrances ADA? No, you don't.
what I'm
But-
asking about is the crossing this way, which I think was what people are talking about on the southern side
Yeah.
of the building.
Yep.
Do you, if we're able to solve our ADA access this way,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what John's saying is that unless we can connect it over and make the whole thing make sense on that south side, why are you doing it? So yeah, if we can make the whole thing work on the north side, then you're done. You can get rid of it and make it more landscaping.
what I was
What
getting to
John's
is if we do
suggesting.
that, and what you were just saying a second ago, and make the east entrance go, so if we make the east pedestrian path work for us and for the hotel, and then have this come over this way and connects getting further to the north.
Yeah, you
That all works much better than what
You
you're
can
saying.
return the island to landscaping and you don't have a pathway to nowhere. Yeah.
Yep.
That would be a great
Dumpster
solution.
stays the dumpster.
Yep, and then the dumpster gets to stay where it is.
I've heard like 5 different items that we talked about as potential issues, and I've heard solutions that are verbally agreed to for most of them. The dumpster screening was the first one was identified, and we said, let's use building materials on that. We heard about the pedestrian path to the north, where we're kind of alluding to something coming out the north face of the building and going west and then heading north from there. We then talked about the south conductivity, and I think I just heard that going south directly is probably not as important, particularly the grade changes that are there. Going to the east, I think, Matt, you talked about sort of the Y connection and making something work there. I hear that. The only one that was brought up on a couple occasions, and we have not talked about any further, was screening of the loading dock. Is that something that you're able to live with as is? Or is that something that we need to?
Well, given the PUE, once you flip to 120 or whatever, it's not, there's no, I mean, it's kind of funny when you look at it now, when I show the PUE line in there, that you've got this little line of plants. And it really fills it behind the curb. It's kind of funny. When I just saw a landscape plan, I'm like, what is she doing? But this makes sense, I guess.
Well, and I think to be clear, when we also talked about the loading dock or the loading bays, screening at the pedestrian scale, I think that's our bigger
Yeah.
concern. So as long as that works with the new entrance configuration.
Pedestrian scale screening to make sure that we segregate where the loading function is from the
Right.
pedestrian that's going to the west of that.
That would work if we're
But you-
adding a different way to get to Spectrum, to
Right.
further to the north.
And that screening can be landscaping from my perspective. You've got a nice little green island there.
I think
Unfortunately,
you got a
as I said,
huge
we've
kit of
got-
parts.
we've got some conduits in the ground there that-
that's
That's an electrical bank.
And a lot of utilities coming into the building from outside.
So,
So anyway, but there's still a large kit of parts. It
Yes.
just doesn't have trees in it. So that kit of parts is all the normal urban, streetscape, landscape package, right? That you can pull right out of the drawer and go. It's got all the little, pedestrian scale lights. It's got wall washing lights on the architectural wall that screens the loading dock. It's got ivy growing up that wall. It's got benches. It's got just all that little stuff. Someplace to go out and sit, and hopefully it doesn't just become smoker's paradise.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think what we probably need to do is the condition to be a condition about the rear entrance, making all that work with the pedestrian path.
I'm hearing 2 conditions, I think.
Exactly, yeah. And then the other is the other general connectivity that goes off-site with
With the hotel.
east and,
To the linear park.
Right.
Well, I was hearing 2 conditions. I think one related to ensuring the dumpster enclosure is integrated into the building architecture.
I think that is, we were talking about both the dumpster and the equipment yard. Correct? That's a question.
And any screening that's over there should reflect the architecture of the. It's a good response because I don't want the caveat to be, well, they didn't say that.
From a functionality perspective, the service yard functions a little bit differently in that someone will need to be able to drive into there to service it. So the way that he has it right now, I think it's a mountable curb with an operable wall, which I don't think you can do an operable ground plate
But
block wall.
what's at the line, the two lines that sit on the south side of that yard, up against those couple of trees and that
Oh,
sidewalk?
you mean screening from that side?
Yeah, what is that? Is that just a curb and then a sidewalk? Or is there a screen
Are
there?
you talking about at the dumpster enclosure? You're
Yeah,
talking
no,
about at
he's
the-
talking about at the
Yard.
generator,
That point right there.
the
Yeah.
sidewalk to the back egress on the east side.
We can put something there. We can put something there.
Again, it's just another, you put a nice little landscaped area there, another great place for a bench. But, bring your base wall out.
But if we move the dumpsters and trash enclosure over there, basically, we're not gonna have any service yard
No,
left.
it's
for-
We're not
what
moving.
we're
Okay,
proposing.
fine. I thought it.
He's saying from
No, that's fine.
from view.
Yeah, there's
This way.
There's two. If somebody puts a nitrogen tank right next to that sidewalk, you don't want that to be right next to your sidewalk. You want a screen between.
We want a screen wall between it, yes.
Yeah.
One time I thought I heard you saying you wanted the dumpsters there, and I,
Well, that'd be cool if it worked, but if it doesn't work,
Yeah, we were told it
if you
didn't
can
work.
give us another 10,000 square feet of site area.
Well, but I think the net result is, to be clear, whether it's on the plan or not, it's hard to tell for sure, but the screen wall would be along the southern edge of the yard and the eastern edge.
Our assumption was basically enclose the gray area.
Right, but you were also talking about how the north side has a mountable curb so
Yeah.
people could drive on.
He's talking about just
So
these
that
two
enclosure
sides.
is going to be a little bit more permeable, whether it's gates and sliding gates or just openings, whatever those are. But for certain, the southern and eastern edge would have a really strong
They're pretty fixed, yes.
screen, yeah.
Yeah, or nothing. I kind of get that the yard has to be just one open curb.
On the north
kinda-
side, you
Yeah,
mean.
on the north side, yeah,
Yeah.
I get that. But the other, there's a building on two, 1.5 sides, and there's, and we want screen on the other 1.5 sides.
So let's get the straw man on the conditions. So we're talking about the materiality and the completeness of the enclosure for the dumpster along the north side of the site, and the materials and screen for the yard on the corner of the building to be more integrated with the main building, right? And staff can take care of making sure that all comes together.
Yeah, and for condition, I have applicant to revise dumpster and service yard enclosures to integrate into building architecture, prior to issuance of building permit.
Okay, good.
Or actually, prior to issuance of any permits.
Okay, good. Second condition, now let's make sure we capture this appropriately, are the pedestrian pathways, right? So we've got develop the north entrance to the building and sidewalk, pedestrian paths to Watkins Mill and Spectrum Avenue. And that would include hardscape, landscape, all of the appropriate accessibility requirements, and pay particular attention to lighting, because we know this will be used in the dark after hours in the winter when people are walking across the street. So it's, and do you want to add anything about more detail to that, or do you think we've got it on the record for staff to?
Yeah, I think we beat that
Okay.
one.
So that's kind of the first part of that condition. The second part of the condition is that the eastern side pathway connections are developed to integrate with the linear park. The third part is the southern pathways are either completed and integrated with the rest of the site, or they're not there, but we don't want pathways to know there.
Let's get rid of that.
Purposeful pathways. It's a good civil engineering firm, yeah. Purposeful pathways.
So Greg, how does that sound? And by the way, applicants team, does that all make sense? Is it-
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have the first two, it's called A going towards the intersection of Spectrum Boulevard and Watkins Mill Road, and B going to the linear park as applicant to work with staff to enhance pedestrian experience and add additional sidewalk connectivity to Spectrum Avenue and Watkins Mill intersection and to the linear park prior to issuance of any permits. We can add in something, I guess, into that, or we can make that a third condition if you want to relate to the southern
I
portion.
would just add to revisit the southern,
Reeva-
necessity of the
reevaluate.
I mean, is there-
southern
Do
pathway.
you need to do that, or can we just literally, I don't know what it's doing for us.
No, I think you're on, that's what we're saying too. I think you're onto something. So if you can solve it on the north side, you're a hero.
And just to be clear, I mean, I guess we would work this out with Greg, but if we're talking about making that pedestrian entrance a better solution from the north exit of our building to the west, we're talking about crossing just at a much further point north closer
Yeah,
to that
within
intersection
radius, yeah.
itself, not necessarily going to like the bus station because of the grade.
No,
Correct.
you can't.
Okay.
I mean, again, go back and look at the approved concept plan. It doesn't, it goes dead into that corner at the intersection. That's your point of connection with one end of that arc.
Yes.
So, yeah, so you're gonna come around the south side of
That little
that
thing there.
stormwater, pond there.
Yep, correct.
And, but again, that can all be nice. It can.
You work your way up to the corner, and it's great.
Yeah.
Go put some stamped asphalt or whatever, make it cross that road and, whatever it needs. It wants to be nice.
Yeah.
Nice, you wrote down nice.
And benches, lots of benches.
Lots of benches, yeah.
So I would just applicant to revise south sidewalk with staff prior to issuance of any permits.
Yeah, well, you can look at the whole
There's
pedestrian system.
too many
Yeah.
if this and that type
Yeah.
things, but you know where we're headed is. We don't want arbitrary sidewalks, we're gonna be all
Yeah,
interconnected.
and if we can't do ADA another way, we gotta do that. So.
Yeah.
We could do one condition if you want, just maybe say applicant to work with staff to re-look at the entire sidewalk connectivity related to this project.
I'm comfortable with that, given the record, and that you guys have seen that, and they've all nodded, yes, they understand those different components. I think that would be fine.
Okay.
You're a genuine scholar.
Well, But if you feel better about spelling out the.
He has to.
Well, no, I mean, I'll leave it to you guys. Do you feel better spelling out the
I think we've been
actual-
pretty specific about what we want.
Okay,
Yeah, I think the record
Yeah, there
speaks for itself.
okay.
I mean, you're good? You think you got, yeah, all right.
Can I add, one question that is sort of tangentially related to this application, it's more about the larger site in general and the linear park. This section of the linear park is, I think, half complete now. We're gonna complete the paving. Going back to the site plan approvals for Matin and for FedEx, there was a whole lot of emphasis that we all placed on a really well-developed landscape around that linear park. And obviously, since this has already been here prior to us having those conversations, I feel like it's at a different level than what we have.
It
It's
is.
fairly sparse. Is there any, and your long-term plans, again, clearly not part of this application, but is there any plans to, once those other sections are completed in landscape, to upgrade the landscaping and the site furniture there so that it is a similar experience from 124 all the way up to Watkins Mill? I mean, it's striking looking at the aerial photos of this and having the renderings from Matin and FedEx in my head of what that experience is going to look like. You're going to hit this spot and it's going to be clearly
Especially
different.
given, your new population, which is different than the medical and the hotel, which are transient. These folks live here basically most of their week, if not weekend, some of these folks. But it's, and you're kind of constrained along Watkins Mill, so, 355 is your opportunity to create some nice amenities.
My guess is they won't feel like they own any of that or feel that run until the substation goes away, because I think that's creating a big barrier right now
Yeah.
to
It's fair.
associating with the linear park, unless you walk the path that we're trying to get.
But there's 400 feet of.
That's fair.
Past the
I know.
substation.
Yeah.
It's just, it's unplanted right now.
I guess what I'm saying is that
It's a nicely screened, it's not a bad substation.
Did you screen it 30 years ago?
We did, look at that. Look at the standout, same materials as the building was, just like you asked.
I guess what I'm saying is whenever that substation goes away, it would be great to see a comprehensive landscape plan from curb to curb in that area.
I mean, frankly, I just think as a business, you're going to attract some, some great users here for phase 2. Obviously, phase 1's going to be absorbed in a heartbeat.
And I think that book of urban planning stuff has some nice fountains and other things in it too. It's on page 30.
Koi pond, maybe?
Isn't it a location for a new food truck?
All right, so,
How many
don't
conditions
knock
do
it.
we have?
That's-
See, now you got his attention.
Now you're getting Greg, recap for us, please. What would we have for conditions now?
So I think we have 8 conditions total now, 2 new conditions added tonight, one related to the connectivity and the sidewalks for the entire site related to the project.
Okay.
And then the other condition related to the enclosures being integrated into the building architecture.
Okay, so Chris, Greg, you guys good with that? You know what you've got to work with when you're working with the applicant, yes?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Everybody good?
That's good.
All right, is there a motion, please?
And if we could just make sure we put into the motion, I don't think it was in the draft motion, the ENV number as well, and I can read that now if you'd like, since the forest conservation plan is included as part of the approval tonight.
Yeah, it wasn't part of, no, it wasn't part of the recommendation, right?
It would be ENV 9201-2022.
Okay. You gonna make the motion, Paul?
If I find the right page, I will.
72. It's on page 72.
All right, and you said that was ENV.
9201-2022.
All right, Mr. Chair, I move that the Planning Commission, based on the exhibit submitted, applicant testimony, staff reports, findings, and recommendation, grant SP 9199-2022 final site plan approval and ENV. Do you want these in the same motion?
Yeah, it's fine.
And ENV 9201-2022
Amended Forest Conservation.
amended forest conservation plan, finding them both in conformance with section 24-170, 24-171 of the city zoning ordinance with the 8 conditions as read into the record.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Good luck. Thanks for working with us on this. Appreciate you showing some attention to those details. I think it'll.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for working with us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us here to be involved in this creative exercise.
Excited to have more life science, it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome, it's a welcome addition to the city, make no mistake about it.
We agree.
Thank you. All right, that takes us to permanent commission. Matt, may I start with you, please?
Nothing for me.
Nothing for you. Phil, anything tonight?
My wife would want me to mention that the book festival is coming up this weekend, and Danny would want me to mention that the book festival is
right.
coming up this weekend.
So
So,
would Mayor Judd.
as would the mayor, as would many, many people. So,
And it's at Borough Park, not City Hall this time.
correct. The tents are going
That's
up.
right.
So,
Is it the past times or the future?
Oh,
It's a book festival.
everyone's just a little tense.
All right, very good, thank you. Lloyd, anything tonight?
It's been brought to my attention that several of the HOAs around the city have been requesting that they convert, that the landscapers convert from gas mowers and gas trimmers to electric. And was wondering if the city has any plans for that from the public works aspect, and if so, what the phasing would be. It's my wife.
It's funny you
It's
say
my
that.
wife.
No,
I
no.
had to do it.
I have to say, I have to echo his concerns because in this period of working from home, during the pandemic,
Oh, God.
I've become acutely aware of how noisy and how often those crews are out in front blowing leaves around the street. And it's remarkable how much of that's going on out there that I wasn't aware of until I had to work right inside the front window for the last 2 years.
So I know that the city manager's office and Public Works is aware of this situation, acutely aware of this situation and this request, and I know there are people, good people, looking into this.
Good people.
All right.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim.
Well, yeah, remember a few years ago, Somerset, that little village of Somerset down near Cherry Chase, passed an ordinance against gas
That's what's
gas blowers.
That's what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I mean, the noise is bad, but say nothing of, they do pump out, those little 2-stroke motors do pump out a ton of exhaust. Yeah. All right, thanks,
Thank you.
Lloyd. So, Greg, John, who wants to do
I will just do a quick reminder, the next meeting is June 1st.
June, jeez.
June, wow. Years have over. So, John, it sounds like something's happening.
Yeah. That was a preview.
Just a couple of items on Lake Forest. As you well know, I think, it's been a few months now that WRS has purchased all the anchors, and so the property is consolidated, which is really good news. We have had several meetings with WRS and the development team for the project. Obviously, the next step is rezoning and a sketch plan. And we do have 2 4-hour meetings over 2 days scheduled for early June to kind of do a internal development team, staff, charrette on the sketch plan. So probably in early June, I'll be able to report on the progress thereof.
Right. So there is movement.
There is movement. And then secondly, and actually more exciting for today, is that the budget for FY23 was approved on Monday night, $72.5 million for the city. It does include funds for the complete zoning rewrite, which and the RFP for that hit the streets today. It's on our website if you're curious. I can send you a link if you like. And
So Greg waited 12 hours once they approved the money before he pushed the button?
maybe 24.
24? Wow, it was shaking the whole time, wasn't it?
But obviously, we had it teed up, and it's on the streets, and hopefully it'll create a lot of excitement.
Great, that's
What do you think the kind of major milestones are for timing?
We anticipate, what we put in the RFP was, I believe, it's anticipated that it'll take approximately 14 months. But the city manager did not want us to be too prescriptive, because she made it very clear to us, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, or a once-in-a-generation, anyway, opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
We need to get it right,
Mhm.
and we should ask the responders to give us a timeline of what they think it will take.
Mhm.
But we're hopeful to do it, right around 14 months or so.
Yeah, good. Great news. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is exciting. All right. Frank, it sounds like we're going to start.
Yeah,
We're
Frank.
going to start having sworn testimony. Is that right?
Yes, I'm not sure it's going to be that large of an issue for the Planning Commission. The issue came up at the Historic District Commission, which typically has applications similar to this, where you have the applicant and sometimes a couple of family members and an architect. This was a controversial application, so there was some opposition. And the question was, well, what are we going to do? Well, I'm no longer counsel to the HCC. We have somebody who's a former state's attorney, our assistant city attorney, and he just swore everybody in, and even including the attorneys. And while there's a question as to whether attorneys should be sworn in, it basically raised the question, okay, well,
Yeah.
is there a requirement that people be sworn in?
Yeah.
And the big question there is, again, here, like tonight, your final site plan public hearings or public meetings it's not that controversial. But the joint public hearings before you jointly with the mayor and city council, they can have a lot of attendance. There can not only be a number of people there personally, physically, but also remotely, as you were checking tonight. So the question is, what do you do? Is the most sensible thing swear everybody in at once? If they're physically present, you can do that. The Board of Appeals does that now. The Animal Control Board will do that. Those are generally considered, if not appeals, certainly key decisions on the record, and they do see themselves as purely quasi-judicial, as opposed to, zoning is a bit of a mix of the legislative as well. What it may call for, and the key is to try to be consistent among our commissions, would have been like tonight, simply swearing everybody in, and that is to tell the truth, the whole truth, to the best of their knowledge and ability. It's a very simple swearing in. That would be what would be required. However, for persons remotely, each one would have to be sworn in as they come in, because there's no way to do that and verify that it happened. Is this a major issue? Well, there is some relevancy in terms of consistency. If at the time of the hearing there is some sort of objection to somebody not being sworn in, if it's not raised at the time, it's waived.
Mhm.
So from that, it's not a big issue. The issue that, and this was research that I finally did to say, well, let's get an answer to this. Does this matter or not? The issue would come up is if there was an appeal, and if this was raised as an additional issue, which if you don't do any swearing in, what my point there is, are we giving them somebody wanting to appeal, are we giving them something extra to complain about? At that time, the question would come up not as an overall objection, well, they should have been sworn in. Is there substantial evidence to justify the decision? Typically, the decisions that you have made have been largely based on the record or written statements.
Mhm.
But if there was an instance where it was based on oral testimony and that was unsworn testimony, it really means it's just public comment then. It's not technically testimony. That could be where the issue would raise.
Okay.
It's a narrow circumstance, but again, just to avoid giving somebody that chance to raise a substantial evidence issue, that would probably be the process. It didn't really seem to be a major issue for tonight, but it could be for the June 1 meeting, maybe at that point. But we will let you know in advance, and there is just a simple statement as to, okay, this is how to swear them in.
And that doesn't.
Generally, that is the chair. The attorney can do it, but it's better, it's generally considered better for the chair.
I want a bailiff. I want somebody to bailiff. Like
Thank
the
you,
People's
Judge
Court,
John.
the guy over the corner. Can we get a bailiff?
That's how we get our viewership numbers up.
Oh,
right.
yeah, that'll help.
Yeah, we can start
Yeah.
doing the.
Do a little bit of night court.
All right, so one of the other issues that's come up, and now I'm worried, I don't want to say it out loud in public, but there's also been people who complain about cross, right? So they say,
They have
we
to
swore.
ask.
What?
They have to ask.
They have to ask. So,
And then if they do, yes, they are allowed to do that.
And if it's sworn, then there's this whole issue of did they perjure themselves, right? I mean, if it's, somebody says something that's a lie.
Well, generally, we discourage lies anyway.
Yes,
but
No,
that-
I know, but I mean, when you get into this whole thing about
That
appeals.
is the, if you do have somebody asked to do a cross-examination, if somebody, I mean, to take it to that
Yeah.
extent, if you do have that happen and it's unsworn testimony, the big question becomes, well, what exactly is the point then?
I know.
So that actually underscores the need, if there is that possibility,
Yeah.
to just have people sworn in.
It's a CYA.
And we also, somewhere in
It
our
is.
rules of procedure, I remember this years ago having to go through this, and it even says somewhere that hearsay is allowed, you know.
Your rules of evidence are not the strict court rules, so you
Yeah.
can't. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a matter of, and that's understood, and the courts
They wouldn't
recognize
change
that as well.
It wouldn't change
But
that.
but your rules do speak to swearing in, and actually, I believe it is the different statutes for the different commissions say different things. I believe yours do specify swearing in is by the chair, now that I think about it.
Okay.
Because we had to research them, which means it is relevant, and
Yeah,
it was considered relevant
Somebody
in putting
thought
the
of it, yeah.
statute together.
somebody brought it up. Okay, well, you let us know by the next meeting if we need to start doing it, and we'll have a script and a process.
I would expect probably by then, if not the meeting after that. Again, we want to get everybody with a comfort level.
Fair enough, okay.
In moving forward.
My very limited concern is that it squelched the kind of conversation we had tonight. So if it becomes more sort of, court language oriented.
Why would that squelch?
What if there's somebody who's, if you put a patina of, let's not, I mean, not up here, but I'm saying,
Yeah.
if you're trying to ask the applicant questions, you're trying to have them work it through in their head, and if they say, look, I don't have the full answer, so we're gonna have to wait, or we're gonna have to have an attorney answer it, because I just don't wanna answer it. If we're gonna have a judicial, as clean as a courthouse would be in terms of what you're presenting to that court, and maybe it's 2 words out of a million that we lose, but maybe it's 1,000 out of a million, so I don't know. But
I mean, the swearing in would happen early on, but that's a good point. And if somebody does say, well, it does require some measure of clarity to say, well, I don't want to be committing perjury here. Yeah, it may hold up a little bit, and that can be the impact. That's a fair answer. At the same time, it's like talking to a journalist and say, well, is this on the
Off the
record
record,
or
off the
not?
record, exactly.
If somebody comes forward and says, this is to the best of my knowledge, I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I know when I'm generally not permitted to speculate that much when I get an answer, but if I don't know something, I'd rather say. Or say, this is what I think, I'll have to verify and let you know. That's legitimate, because they're honestly saying there might be a measure of uncertainty. It does make people be a bit more careful.
Well, if you can have a paragraph explaining just what you just said, but in a very concise way, before the swearing in. In other words, at the beginning of every meeting, John would say, or the chairman would say, this is why we're doing it, this is what,
you get a bailiff video.
this is why we're doing it, this is what it's all about. Just put them at ease. And then once it's done, it's over, and then people just go back to doing their own thing.
Right.
Like I
And
said,
the point
99
is to
out of
get
100
the swearing
times.
in early so that it's not a
Exactly.
consistent thing throughout the
And just
term.
to Lloyd's point, just make it clear that this isn't Judge Wapner or whatever real court is. This is, this is a conversational planning group that's pseudo-judicial.
And conversational is
Yeah.
the right word. I think that's the way the distinction is. It's conversational.
Yeah. And
So it's an opinion, it's fair, it's fair.
And I didn't read as deep as John did into the rules, but, I'm sure it's no coincidence that they say, look, conversation, hearsay, neighborhood scuttlebutt is part of the planning process, Okay.
Cool. Looking forward to it. Always something to keep us on our toes, right?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Frank. We'll look forward to
Sure.
whatever that looks like.
We'll let you know.
Say that we're not adjourned yet.
That's true, we're not. We're still talking, aren't we?
That's right.
All right, anything else?
I want to make sure.
Where are we?
We are.
Chris, thanks for being here. Anything from your corner of the office? No? Okay. You're welcome if there is. All right, if there's nothing else, have a good evening. We're adjourned.